things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner, is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner, is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.
Rabbit Hole is a community-driven radio. At times the community comments may reveal prejudices and other beliefs that we or our sponsors do not condone. Views or opinions expressed by the community, callers, or guests, are those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views or opinions of this site. Ripon Common Sense content is intended for mature audiences only. Enjoy.
Hello. Hello. This is My Life DIY and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to DarkWolf's Den.
The DarkWolf's Den Show on Ripon Common Sense Radio.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
Are ghosts real?
We had 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Does time travel actually exist?
The laws of physics seem to be compatible with time machines.
You know, sometimes I wonder about reincarnation. Don't you?
A 4-year-old boy in Adelaide, Australia, has told his parents that he used to be Britain's Princess Diana.
What would happen if the world found out that aliens were real?
I didn't say disclosure would be easy, but what is the alternative?
To establish a space force as the 6th branch of the armed forces.
We have so many questions and yet so little time, so to have you here, the pleasure is all mine.
Coming to you from a secret mountain cave, hidden deep within the Idaho wilderness. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and we are broadcasting live across the multiverse from a secret cave hidden high up in the beautifully snow-covered peaks of the Idaho mountains. That's right. We're ripping through the electromagnetic soup, tearing through the atmosphere, and tunneling away into your radio like a quantum particle. This is the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, April 29th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday with our discussion on free will versus determinism. But there's a possibility that neither one of them have to be mutually exclusive. Perhaps both can exist at the same time. How is this possible? Well, it could be something called a time-locked event. What is that? Well, we're going to dig into all that and much, much more here in just a moment. But first, today in history. On this day in 1992, a jury acquits the Los Angeles police officers that were charged in using excessive force in the beating of Rodney King. The acquittal sparks massive riots throughout the city that lasted upwards of 5 days. It's a tumultuous time in American history and one that I will never forget. And that is today's Today in History. Can't we all just get along? If you guys ever have heard of that meme, that is where that meme comes from. And that's another reason I believe that this is a time-locked event. But what is a time-locked event? Well, this is a concept that I personally came up with a couple years ago, looking at time travel, looking at the concepts of the soul contract, and so many different concepts that could suggest that things are time locked, and we're going to get into what that is here in just a minute, but bear with me, guys, because like I said, this is one of the concepts that I personally came up with on my own. This is the first time I have tried to publicly talk about it and discuss what I think this is. So if this is a little scattered tonight, I do apologize. I've tried to put it in somewhat of a coherent order. So before we get started, let's go back to last night's episode. If you haven't heard last night's episode on free will versus determinism, definitely go check that out. That is an episode that is almost a primer for this episode, because in there we suggest both can be true. We suggest the free will could be the way that things are. We've all got free will. Then again, it seems a lot of things are predetermined, and we'll touch on that again here in just a moment. But what if they don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? What if both can be true at the same time? Well, that's the concept that we're going to be working with tonight. We're going to see if they both can't be true by something called a time-locked event. And put very basically, these are events that must occur regardless of what else occurs around us. So yesterday, for example, I had a moment that I would call a time-locked event. Well, 2 days ago it started. You see, on the International Mandela Effect Conference channel over on YouTube, we've been doing these things called open tables. And this is a show where we try to pull together Mandela Effect people as well as the board members of IMEC and discuss Mandela Effect for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. Well, we had had a guest lined up all month long. I'm not going to throw that person out there. I don't want to, embarrass them because something came up. And at the last minute, they had to cancel. Which I understand, we weren't upset. However, there was a conversation going on about these different movies of Mandela Effect at the time amongst us and the board members. And we were going to do something in the episode about the movies, Mandela movies, and the Oscars had just happened. And, of course, some of our stories came from the Oscars. So we decided, maybe we should do an award show. And it started as a joke. Honest to God, I said, yeah, let's call it the Mandys. Well, lo and behold, we created the Golden Mandy Award. This was out of the blue, and I mean just instant. It occurred just like that. But what was really crazy is when our guest fell through on us. And I had also run up on a video on YouTube of a teenager, talking about the Mandela Effect in a TEDx talk. And I had shared this with the team, what I would do normally. In 24 hours, we were able to get a hold of this person, invite them on the show. So we have our new guest all of a sudden. That Mandy Award that I spoke of earlier, well, guess who more than deserved and won that Mandy Award? It would be that teenager, Miss Bree Banage. If you're listening, well done. She won the first ever IMEC Mandy Award. Now, here's the thing. I feel like all of that was time locked, and here's why. It came out of a joke, first off. I honestly was just joking about, let's call it the Mandys, and all of a sudden we created an award. And then we all of a sudden had somebody to give it to, because we were going to do it, again, more as a joke. It goes to this movie or that movie. But the finding, the timing, the divine timing of finding the video myself, of suggesting it to the team, of independently of that coming up with the Mandy idea, and then all of that coming together the way it did for this specific person to win it, that deserved it nonetheless, that it wasn't even created even 24 hours prior to that. That had to be a time-locked event. Now, here's why I really think so, because during the show, I was still unsure at the moment if she was actually going to be able to join us in the show. And we got right up to the point of calling the winner out, and I announced the winner. You can go back and watch this on YouTube. This is live at the time, so it's easy to watch. I announced the winner. And I started to say, well, we had tried to get a hold of, and before I could finish the sentence, I look on the screen, and there sits our winner, Miss Bree. And I asked afterwards, my producer, I said, well, did she just arrive, or was she sitting there for like an hour? No, she had just arrived moments prior. The timing was more than divine. And we always talk about that too, divine timing. Perhaps divine timing is the time-locked event. That could be just another word for a time-locked event. Another thing that would happen that I would call a time-locked event, you remember Dogecoin? Of course, we've all heard of Dogecoin. I'm sure quite a few of us are invested in it. Full disclosure, I am. But Dogecoin was created as a joke. It wasn't created as a serious coin at all. And now it's a social meme. Everybody knows about Dogecoin. Even if you don't know crypto, you know about Dogecoin. Now that's funny because it was originally created as a joke. But now we see it being a general investment vehicle. Perhaps it's time-locked. And once again, there's so many of these time-locked events through history that I could point to. But what about free will? If everything's time-locked, doesn't that suggest it's predetermined? No, that does not suggest it's predetermined, not even a little bit, because here's the way I see it. You see, I think we have free will. I think I have free will whether or not I'm going to spit on the sidewalk, Or whether or not, like I said last night, I'm going to sit here and continue to do this show or walk out the door and leave dead air. That is my free will. That is my choice. And I do feel I have that choice. But there's certain things in my life that have to happen. I have to meet perhaps my significant other. I have to, well, of course we know we have to go to work, but I'm talking metaphysically speaking. I have to go to town to get toilet paper. And then I end up running into a person that happened to run the local radio station here and didn't know it at the time, but started a conversation, and all of a sudden I'm on the radio with the show here locally. This hasn't happened yet. This is a hypothetical, let's be clear here. But it's one of those things that could happen. My free will was that I'm just going to choose at this time to go to the store. His free will was he was going to choose also at that time to go to the store. But the event of us meeting at that time would have been time locked. Again, this is hypothetical. This has not happened. But why would these things have to occur? Matter of fact, I'm going to wait to get into that in the second half. But I'm just going to kind of keep going through some examples here of free will versus determinism and how they're not mutually exclusive. So your free will could be, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go drive to another city and have dinner. I want to do something different, right? This is my free will, random choice. I'm going to go choose a city randomly, and I'm going to go to that city, hopefully within a couple, random miles. That ain't another state, let's hope. But I'm going to choose a random city, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to have dinner. Well, while I'm in this random city, I meet a person that I just hit it right off with. And we become instant best friends. And our best friends all of our lives. Or the rest of our lives. Meeting that person would have been time locked. Because their free will, just like mine, brought them to that point. But at that moment, we say stuff like, it felt like I was meant to meet you. It felt like I've known you forever. It feels like we were meant to be. Well, perhaps that's exactly what it was. It was meant to be. It was that meeting was meant to be. Regardless of what other free will movement you made. Now, let's take this to another degree. Say I didn't decide to go out of town and have dinner. Say I decided to go to my friend's house instead and have dinner. And then something comes up and he has this spark. Hey, there's this really great restaurant, but it's a couple towns over. I really want to go there, though, and I can afford it. Let's go. You still end up at that restaurant, meeting that person that becomes your best friend for the rest of your life. It doesn't necessarily have to take the same path, I guess is what I'm getting at. Just because your free will leads you down this path, there still could be things that are about to happen, regardless whether you took yourself there or someone went with you, that event still has to happen. You have to be there for that event. I'm trying to think of different things in my life. My best friend, who, may she rest in peace, she passed away almost a year ago. May 13th will be a year ago that she passed away. But the way we met was really weird. I was in 7th grade. She was in 6th. They had what was called a sock hop at our school. And I went to this dance, and while I was walking around with a male friend of mine, there was a girl over on the corner who had a friend of hers. She was teaching how to flirt. Well, I happened to be walking by, and we caught each other's eye and started flirting and talking and hit it right off just instantly. I mean, hit it right off. Instantly. This person became the closest friend I ever had for over 20 years. And again, may she rest in peace now. There was a connection between us that was nothing short of soul-to-soul connection. And I wonder many times if I hadn't gone to that dance, if I had decided not to go, would I have still ended up there? Or would I have met her perhaps in a cafeteria? Or in gym? Or walking down the sidewalk outside the school? Would we have still met and become the best friends that we were? Not a doubt in my mind we were. Because at that moment, my path was determined mixed with hers. Our fates were aligned and crossed at that point, and they crossed many times throughout my life. We were the best of best friends. And I don't want to dwell on that, but the meeting, the strangeness of the meeting, I really think was that was time locked. She was meant to be my best friend for my life. And it's just these moments in our lives we can look back on. Think about when you met your significant other. Or think about, I think about a lot. I've moved to Idaho from Tennessee. And I wonder, would I still have this very radio show and be talking to you guys right now if I stayed in Tennessee? And I think I would. I think I would have still been given the show under different circumstances, but I think I would still be talking to you guys right now. I think me having this show and being able to talk to you each week, especially about time-locked events, is a time-locked event. I honest to God believe that. Now, would it have been under the same circumstances? No. I would have been in Tennessee. I would have had a different work schedule. I would have had a lot of different things, but I would have still been given the show. I wonder, would I have been able to start the International Mandela Effect Conference if I was still in Tennessee? And honestly, as much as I went back and forth in that, I think that was time-locked. Matter of fact, there's not a doubt in my mind that the IMEC was time-locked because there's something magical and divine intervention every time we go to do something. I think that first International Mandela Effect Conference in Ketchum was more than time-locked because of the story I told you last night. Remember, I told you last night, remember this story, it'll come up again tomorrow, about how I had the extra money that I was going to use for the conference, but I couldn't because, well, I could. I ended up having to, as a matter of fact, but I was going to do something else with it. But fate said, no, you don't get to do this. My free will was to do this. But it was thwarted because the conference had to occur. The people that came had to be there. The people that I met, I had to meet in person. I don't know why to this day. I'm sure there's still a whole lot more down the road yet to play out that happened from that meeting. That weekend was magical. And I really feel that it was time-locked. The people that were there were meant to be there. And once again, we're back to this, it was meant to be, right? Perhaps it was meant to be. Their free will was to come, but they were meant to be there. And regardless, I think, of what path they took, they would have ended up there. The ones that were meant to end up there. And again, in the second half, I'll get into why I think people are meant to do certain things, why I think we're meant to end up one place or another. And I touched on it a little bit maybe earlier, but we're really going to get into it here in the second half. But there's so many things that I can point to in my life that I would say were time-locked. But then you've got events that were globally time-locked, that were planet-wide. Like 9/11, it only happened in America, but that affected the entire nation. There was a feeling on that day that I've never felt a day before in my life. It was more than just the fact it was a terror attack on the U.S. It was a feeling of meant to be. No matter what happened, this was not going to be avoided. And I really feel that a lot of things, well, of course, I think a lot of things in history are like that. The Mandela effect does change some things in history, and perhaps the Mandela effect can only change things that are not time-locked. Perhaps it can only mess with things that don't have a future meaning, to the degree of time-lockability, I should say. For instance, we've seen changes within the details of World War II, but the outcome of World War II is still the same. What started World War II is still the same. And the 11th hour that ended World War II is still the same. Now, again, some of the details in the middle are much different than what I remember, but the outcome and the beginning were exactly the same. And those are the time-locked moments, I do believe. No matter what timeline you go on that I've been on so far, if we're jumping timelines according to the Mandela effect, if the theory is right that we are jumping timelines, then every timeline I've been to has the Titanic sinking. Every timeline I've been to has World War I, II, has the Civil War. Hey, everything big like that in history. There hasn't been any historical events that have been literally erased. Every timeline I've been on, the big historical events still exist. So perhaps it's these events, or at least specific details of these events, are time locked, like the beginning or end of the war. 9/11, we mentioned earlier. And you could go on and on and on. The lockdowns, I know you guys don't want to hear that, but the worldwide lockdown, perhaps that was time locked. Because I haven't been to an Earth where it didn't occur. They didn't shut the world down in 2020. Now, am I sure of it? No. But I am willing to put my eggs in that basket and say that the lockdowns were time locked. And the reason I think so is because it was during that lockdown that I was just by chance given the opportunity to do this show. That was a year ago, guys. You believe that? That I was given the ability to talk to you guys every week. And that's one reason that I think that I would have been given this whether I was in Tennessee or whether I'm where I'm at right now. And I went back and forth on this a million times in my head. I really feel the ability to talk to you guys each week, to have this show, was a time-locked event in my life. I was meant to have this show. I was meant to talk on the radio. I didn't know this for a lot of my life. I did not even like my voice for a lot of my life. But the person that couldn't stand their voice, and most people can't, let's be fair, but I really felt I was going to make people's ears bleed. Apparently people like my voice. I didn't know that. I would have never considered myself a radio guy. That's the last thing I would have seen myself doing. And yet here I sit talking to you guys every week, twice a week, week in, week out. And I love it. I absolutely enjoy it, but having the opportunity to do it was given to me out of the blue, it seemed to me. I mean, literally out of the blue. There was no jokes, no conversation about it. It was literally, hey, how do you feel like doing this? And when I moved to Idaho, the same thing occurred. 29 years I'd been trying to move to Idaho. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue one day, I saw it on the computer, and there's a message from somebody, a close friend of mine that lived in Idaho, that did not know I'd been trying to get here for that amount of years, that literally offered me a freebie. Hey, come on out, let's get set up, I can give you a whole new life. And I did. I jumped on it hands and feet, but 29 years of my own free will, I did everything I could to try to scrimp, save, and find ways to get back out west. And then all of a sudden, when the time was right, when it was meant to happen, it was offered to me on a silver platter. When it was meant to happen, the show was offered to me on a silver platter. I talk a lot about, I come up with the idea of the Mandela Effect Conference, International Conference, and I did not act on it for 6 months. I talked myself out of it a multitude of times until I finally had something nag me in the back of the head and said, do it. Now is the time, do it. If you fail, do it. And I did. And ever since then, it has been more than divine and magical. And again, I'm sure we can look across all of our lives and find these moments. This isn't mutually exclusive to me. I've heard people tell me stories all the time. I just happened to be standing there and I found a $100 bill. What are the odds? And that's another thing. We find ourselves saying a lot. What are the odds? I have found myself saying it a whole lot in the last couple of years. And perhaps that could be a hint as to why these time-locked events need to occur. And again, we're going to get into that here in just a moment. But ladies and gentlemen, we do have to go ahead and take a network break right here. This is definitely a time-locked event, right? We have to take our half-hour break every episode and give you guys a quick message about the rest of the upcoming weekend. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are, at least those on YouTube over there, or pausing, I guess you would say, for station identification. So we're going to take this time-locked break, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be right back with the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show and a continued conversation on free will versus determinism, time-locked events, right after these messages. Don't you touch that dial. That's right.
We gotta stoke the fires and run off the men in black. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, Jerry Hicks and the DarkWolf's Den Show on a Thursday night. Are you enjoying the program so far? I know I am. If you haven't done so already, please make sure to thumb up that video, hit that subscribe button, and ring that bell. You'll get our notifications every time we go live. We're here every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights, bringing you the very best of common sense radio, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole. I'll return again tomorrow night, Friday, April 30th. Can you believe it? It's already April 30th. I don't know where exactly time goes, but wherever it goes, there it is. Come along with me as we pick up from the show we were unable to do Sunday last, science. That's right, we're going to talk about the science of things, especially in today's day and age. Then Saturday night, come along with me as we journey through vaudeville. I've got some really great tales to share with you from the vaudeville days. And you know what? I think vaudeville is going to make a comeback. Based on what I've seen on this journey Nikki and I are on across the country, I honestly think the days of vaudeville are coming back. How about you? Tune in Saturday night and find out. And then, of course, the most interactive airwaves takes to the air on Sunday night. It's an experiment game of the Fantastic Fun Show. We're going to have some new formats to play with. And, of course, your king, Champion Sports Nation, will not be competing this round. So it's going to open up the throne for perhaps you to be named the Fantastic Fun King or Queen Sunday night, May 1st. And Champion Sports Nation is going to return Tuesday night to the Backstage VIP Lounge with Tuesday night videos. That's right, it kicks off at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, as all shows here do. But join the Rippin' Rabbits live in the VIP Lounge Tuesday night, May 4th, starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. He'll be presenting Original versus Cover, exploring some of the most famous cover songs to their originals, including some music trivia and followed by open requests. So the weekend is extended for you again. We're going to return now to Thursday, April 29th edition of the DarkWolf's Den Show with your host, Jerry Hicks. You're listening to the Rippin' Common Sense Radio Network, the Rippin' Rabbit Hole.
This is My Life DIY, and
hi, this is JoJo.
Hi, my name is Ash.
Hey everybody, it's AJ the Rippin' Rabbit.
This is Cynthia Sue Larson.
This is your man Meta, aka Propagate This Light.
And you're now listening
to DarkWolf's Den.
The DarkWolf's Den Show on Rippin' Common Sense Radio.
If you were meant to be controlled, you would have come with a remote, but you didn't. And that's why you listen to the DarkWolf's Den Show. Now, here is your host, Jerry Hicks.
That's right, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And welcome back to the second half of the DarkWolf's Den Show for Thursday, April 29th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just tuning in, we've been discussing a concept called time-locked events. And like I said before, guys, this is a concept that I personally have come up with. This is the first time I have expressed it publicly. So if it seems a little scatterbrained, I do apologize. But hopefully it's made sense so far. Now, in the second half, we're going to dig a little deeper into this and try to find out concepts and reasons why I think this is possible. And I'm going to once again go back to the original scenario that I brought up yesterday about how my free will seemed to have gotten thwarted 5 times in a row. And the reason is the money I was going to use to do what I was going to do ended up being needed for the Mandela Effect Conference, which in my opinion was the time-locked event that had to occur regardless of what I wanted to do. And this would seem to suggest the idea of a anchor point, right? So does this concept mean that time travel may not be possible? Yes and no. I think it may actually mean that time travel is possible. See, one could argue that an event is time-locked, then it would be easier to travel to, like an anchor point, like I said, a fixed point in time like they call it on Doctor Who. However, I would say if you followed this thought to its logical conclusion, then it would not be an anchor point at all. Instead, it would seem to suggest the self-consistency theory of time travel. So what is this? This states that no matter how hard you try, the universe will actually stop you from changing the past and thereby disallowing paradoxes. So there's a bit of metaphysicality to this. The universe itself seems to have a consciousness to it. And we've discussed this before, but let's look at the grandfather paradox. This is the most famous paradox in all of time travel. And the idea is, if I were to go back and kill my grandfather before he met my grandmother, then my parents would never have met and I'd have never been born to go back and kill my grandfather, i.e. the paradox. But perhaps the universe has a self-consistency about it. We know that there is this error-correcting code in the equations that make up the fabric of the universe. Dr. James Gates has pointed this out more than once. So perhaps this error-correcting code, the purpose of it, isn't necessarily to keep things running smoothly on a continual basis, but on a past basis. So let's say I decide to go back and kill my grandfather. Well, let's assume I have the gun, I'm hidden behind a tree, or hidden in a bush or something. The moment I fire, the gun could misfire or jam. Or my grandfather could duck. Or somebody could call his name and he could move. Or a multitude of things. He could not even be where he should be. There's 1,000 things that could happen that the universe could change just one little small circumstance and move my grandfather to where I could not do anything. No matter how many times I tried, something will stop me every single time. Again, this is a theory, but with the time-locked events, this makes sense. It's time-locked that my grandfather has to do certain things, has to meet my grandmother, has to have my parent, has to be my grandfather. You know what I mean? Things are time-locked in that case. In that way, the universe would be so self-consistent, you can time travel all you want, you just can't mess with the past. The first variant of this suggests that no matter how many times you try to kill your grandfather, like I said, this will happen. The other variant is the concept of the idea when someone time traveled that they didn't end up in the same universe, right? That's the other alternate to the time travel. To break the paradoxes is just put them in an alternate universe by themselves. Or in an alternate universe where everyone seems the same, but the grandfather you kill wasn't your grandfather. That would also defeat the timeline originally being messed up. Or perhaps it is these time-locked events that create some form of synchronicity between the infinite number of timelines that exist. If they're locked, then perhaps they're locked across time. Like I spoke a moment ago, the Titanic and all these different things that are locked across all the timelines. And this makes sense when we look at the many worlds theory, or the Copenhagen interpretation of string theory. This makes the opposite... So I've got this written down, I do apologize. The many worlds theory, also known as the Copenhagen interpretation, states that for every decision that one makes, the opposite decision is played out on a timeline that is just as real as the reality you experience, even though you are not conscious of it. This is a major facet of string theory, which is the leading theory in physics right now, or quantum physics right now. So with the many world theories in mind, let's have some fun. First, we must admittedly make some assumptions, though. The first assumption that we are going to make is that the person in an alternate timeline is still the same person in the first timeline as far as character is concerned. So, if I make a decision that splits my timeline, let's just say I decide to go for a drive. That is dangerous enough that I may die. So I would say at that point, the universe makes a decisional split. So, at this point, one of me went for a drive, one of me stayed home. But I'm the same character. I have the same overall generalities of myself, same personality. I'm just on a different, quote, timeline. So, that is the first assumption we're going to make. The next assumption we're going to make is that the alternate timeline person will still have the same thing to accomplish in their life as the original timeline person. So just because the timeline splits doesn't mean your time-locked events, your soul contract events, we'll get to that in a minute, aren't supposed to happen. This very well could be the case. Finally, we are going to assume that time-locked events are the same across all timelines. So the fact that I'm supposed to meet this person, whoever that person may be, regardless of what timeline I'm on, that event is still going to occur, right? Regardless of what free will choices I make in between, that event still must occur. Now, with these assumptive parameters in mind, let's start our experiment. Let's take a typical day in our life. You get up, get dressed, go to work. On your way to work, you stop at a Dunkin' Donuts. In one reality, but you were also considering McDonald's for breakfast in another. Which the other you went to? Both of you go to work, and from there you clock in at exactly 8:57 a.m. Throughout the day, decisions will be thrown at you. You make decisions all day long based on your free will. You leave work and get hit with every stoplight on the way home. Because you're already late, you stop at a diner for a quick dinner. You are intrigued by the waitress, who later becomes your significant other. The other you goes a different direction and gets held up by a bus. Because the other you is already running behind, he decides to stop at a diner for a quick dinner. You're still you in character and become intrigued by the waitress, who would later become your significant other. No matter the route, the indecision came out the same. In this scenario, no matter what choice was made, no matter how they went, the ending was the same. The meeting of the significant other was a time-locked event. It was meant to be, if you will. So let's take another idea of this. Let's go from a more religious standpoint. So a lot of people, including myself, believe in something called soul contracts, right? And soul families and soul groups. The way this works is in between lifetimes, you have the ability to first review the life that you lived. After that, you get to decide what you're going to do in the next life. Perhaps things in your original life review, like somebody you made fun of, or something happened that you want to experience life from that type of point of view. You want to learn, your soul wants to learn that lesson. Certain lessons have to be learned in each life. Certain experiences have to occur to learn these lessons. So in these opinion, the opinion of these people and the opinion of myself, you set out what's called a soul contract, a metaphysical contract, if you will, of certain events that must occur in your life. For instance, me moving to Idaho, me having a radio show to talk to you guys, me starting IMEC. Lord knows what IMEC will grow to in the future. Perhaps there's something 20 years down the road that's got to happen that IMEC had to be created for that to happen later on. You know what I mean? Time locked. It had to occur. Well, with the soul contracts, it's the same idea. In my life, these things were in my soul contract. I really believe that. In your soul contract, perhaps it's meeting your significant other, or what job you'll take, or what special things are going to happen to you. And it ain't even got to be special with the soul contracts. We're gonna focus on those things in this particular scenario. So I come into this world. I exercise my free will to a degree that I feel like I'm fully exercising my free will, but certain things are guiding my path. Certain nuances. It may have nothing to do with free will decisions. Things that we know are out of our hands. Not everything in the world can we control. It's these moments that happen that are so sudden and so out of our control, no matter what, there's nothing we could have done about them. These are the things I consider like time lock events. Things that, no matter what, it was out of my control. 5 times I tried to go out of town. 5 times by circumstances beyond my control, I was unable to. And I assume, once again, this would work with time travel and these soul contracts. No matter what my free will is when I enter this world, certain things in the soul contract must be fulfilled, and I will be put in those positions one way or the other. Moving to Idaho or staying in Tennessee, the lockdown still would have occurred. I still think I would have been given this radio show. My voice is still the same. I still think I would have been given the opportunities and abilities, at least the big ones, that I have been given. The opportunity to do IMAC. Now, I may not have been able to do it as easily, but something tells me even then the money would have suddenly showed up for whatever reason. I paid a lot the first one out of my own pocket. I was able to because of the situation that I'm in. But I think I would have still been able to, even if I wasn't in this particular situation, because I feel that it was meant to be. And it's these meant to be moments that I call time-locked moments. And like I said, I proved to Cynthia Sue Larson yesterday an example. We lived through an example of what I call a time-locked event. Like I expressed in the first half. The Mandy was created by chance. I found that video of the youth by chance, by Miss Bree by chance. And by chance, at the same time, it all came together. Just so perfectly that even if I planned it, it couldn't have been that perfect. I really think this is what's going on in reality. I think we have free will as to the smaller decisions, whether I decide to get up and walk to town or sit here and continue talking to you guys, whether I spit out the window or spit on the floor. Things that aren't going to make a huge difference. No, I don't spit on the floor. I'm just using it as an example, just so we're clear. These little things that aren't going to make much of a difference, opposed to the bigger things that, regardless of my free will, I'm going to end up there. It's going to feel like free will. But when I look back at the decisions made that led to that point, I'm going to start to see that how intricately things were played out. Like foreshadowing in your life. You ever had something foreshadowed? It happens to me all the time. I'll have these little random strange things, the little strange job or something that, something that I only do a day or two, didn't really mean much until 5 years later when I need whatever I learned in that moment. It's these time-locked events. These, like I said, there's things I've done that I've done one day. Had no real reason behind it. That's odd. I wonder what that meant. And never really had to do it again until 5 years later. And then all the stuff I learned on that day suddenly was needed, and I was able to build on it. But that's what I think. That's what I think a time-locked event is. But what do you guys think? Do you think there is such thing as a time-locked event in reality? Do you think both our lives and the world has metaphysical time-locked events? Or do you think everything's just chance, and perhaps it is free will or determinism? In my way, both can exist and work together. In the end, ladies and gentlemen, all you can do is look at the evidence, apply a little common sense, and you be the judge. We got to close it out. That's right. That's it for this episode of the Darkwolf's Den Show for Thursday, April 29th, 2021. So whether you're on the edge of reality, the edge of the galaxy, or the edge of your seat, we're glad you chose us to be right there with you. The Den may be closing tonight, ladies and gentlemen, but don't you worry, the weekend fun has only just begun. That's right. Tomorrow, Friday, April 30th, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. Our buddy AJ the Rippin' Rabbit will be back with another episode of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole Live Show. That's right. Tomorrow he's going to be talking about science. Unfortunately, last Sunday's episode did not happen due to some technical difficulties, so he's going to pick the topic up once again on Friday. Science, of course, is one of my all-time favorite topics, especially with what he's going to be discussing and announcing on Friday. Then on Saturday, May 1st, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit will be back once again with another episode of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole Live Show. That's right. He'll be talking about vaudeville. Such a funny topic that is, quite comedic. If you enjoy comedy, do make sure you check that out on Saturday, May 1st, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central. That's right. Then on Sunday, to round out the weekend right, May 2nd, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit will return to the airwaves one more time with one final weekend episode of the Rippin' Rabbit Hole Live Show. That's right. He'll be discussing experiments. You know how AJ loves his on-air experiments, and I'm sure this will be none the different. We even went through a thought experiment this evening. We love experiments here at the Rippin' Rabbit Hole, and we're going to be discussing, or at least AJ's going to be discussing, a large variety of experimental data on Sunday, May 2nd, 2021, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10/9 Central, right here on Rippin' Common Sense Radio, as well as the RippinRabbitHole.com. Speaking of the RippinRabbitHole.com, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, make sure you hop on over there and sign up for your Backstage Pass. That's right. This is going to get you access to all of the amazing fun that we have on the RippinRabbitHole.com. We've got things over there like the Down the Rabbit Hole section. That is our exclusive social media alternative. If you're tired of the big boys on social media, come on over to one that is made just for you. That's right. While you're over there, make sure that you get on the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. That's where I'm going to be here in just a couple of moments. And I can't wait to see you guys back there and carry on the conversation of time-locked events. If you have questions, do feel free to come back and ask them. I would love to hear your questions on this particular conversation. Free will versus determinism in time-locked events. Also, while you're over on the Rippin' Rabbit Hole, if you did sign up for the Backstage Pass, you will receive our weekly newsletter. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to be gotten out this weekend. The AJ the Rippin' Rabbit's on the road doing an amazing cross-country road trip and giving us details from the road. So I understand there's a little tie-up this week with these last 2 weeks with the email, but we will be getting those back on a regular schedule really soon. That I can guarantee, ladies and gentlemen. And with that said, like I said, I'm going to go over here and hit the 24/7 Backstage Lounge. Also, while you're over on the RippinRabbitHole.com, if you want to send us a shout out like you hear at the beginning of the show, it's really easy to do. Just go down to the bottom of every page. You're going to see a great big red button. Go ahead and smack that button and send us 30 seconds of audio to the studio, and we'll put it on the radio just for you. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to hearing from you, as we always do. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf, and it is both my honor and pleasure to be here with you guys and kick these weekends off right every weekend. So on behalf of our producer, AJ the Rippin' Rabbit, as well as Walt House, Chick Mandela Effect, Michael Musco, Tom Baillies, who does this amazing groovy music you're listening to right now. Get it, Tom? That's right, Tom Baillies, Red Shed Studios there. I love it. And on behalf of all these folks, ladies and gentlemen, I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. And remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay awake, but Dare to dream. That's right. How? Yeah. Good night, everybody. Take it away, Tom. No. Tom Baillies, ladies and gentlemen, Red Shed Studios. My name's Jerry Hicks, and I'll see you next weekend. Bye, everybody.
Unlocked and into the dark. Some things are better left unknown. And I'll never find you here, 'cause no one's ever Oh, what a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. Oh, what a sinner. Is it in her? What's the truth in this riddle? Is love really just this simple? I can't seem to find my way in this world that never stays. What a widow, a peaceful spider. When the glass is clean, she's a sneaky hider. Hide the lies and the alibis. What a sinner. Is it in her? Is this real? Just illusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. I'm lost in wonderland of confusion. Is this real or just illusion? Manifestation or a dark delusion? Is this real or just illusion? I'm lost in a wonderland of confusion.